Hey guys, today we're going to be making a pop-up Valentine's Day card on the Silhouette Cameo. So let's go ahead and get started by opening our Silhouette Studio software. Now I'm going to be using the 12 by 12 cut mat for this. So let's go ahead and make sure our document settings are set to that. Then we'll grab a rounded rectangle. The radius can be adjusted, but I'm fine with it. Let's go ahead and do it freehand. Unlock the aspect and then change the width and height to 4 inches by 6 inches and then lock the aspect. Then we can go ahead and grab a line tool. Let's set our line style to perforated or dashed. We can use the crosshairs to match up with either side. Hold shift to draw the line to keep it horizontal. And then once we've got it to length, we can go to align and set it align center and align middle. Center will make sure any gap that we have is divided by 2 basically. And then middle will center it so that the crease is actually in the middle of the card. Then it's going to be Control D to duplicate, and we can drag it over to the opposite side of the mat. I like to keep it with a 1/2 inch margin all the way around. That way if we trim it a little too far into the cut mat, we aren't going to risk cutting nothing. So next, let's go ahead and get ready to cut the pop-up flap. For this, we're going to draw 2 parallel lines. We can draw one, duplicate it, and move it over. The vertical lines are going to be solid cut. These will actually cut, and then we'll do 2 perpendicular to that, which will be perforated because those will just fold. We want this to be basically centered. If your design gets tweaked, go ahead and move it. But basically, we will adjust these to where we like them. You can group them and center on the horizontal. If you don't center horizontal, they'll actually sit on top of each other. So let's go ahead and just make sure that this is all even. If the height is different on one side of the perforation for the crease, then it won't fold properly and you'll get wonky pop-ups. But now that we've got that, we're going to do the horizontals. Again, these will be perforated. And that just keeps the cutter from going all the way through. There are other ways to perforate or to score it, to crease it. I like this method because it doesn't require me to run the job twice with a different setting. And the perforation doesn't look bad on the cardstock I'm using. But of course your mileage may vary if you've got different material. So we've got all that set. Now we can start figuring out the text we're going to put on here. I ultimately have mine set a different size. The cut files for this will be the ones that you see actually cut. But so this is just, the cash me outside. How about that? So we're gonna scale this on the inside so that our text does not overlap the pop-up flap. This is going to get cut out on the outside of the card, and we don't want that reveal to show something that we've actually pulled away. So you can use the font selection to change the size. You can scale it. You can do all sorts of stuff. I'm not very accomplished with graphic design, so definitely, if you know better than me, throw some comments or knowledge my way. Maybe you can help me improve my next go around with design. And you can see if we do just the vertical adjustment in Silhouette Studio, it actually just squashes it. So yeah, don't do that. We can also go back into Align and center this when we get it set up. So now that we've got it scaled, you can see it's underneath the tab. We just want to make sure that it doesn't go any higher than that. And then you can move it with the arrows, which is really slow, or you can use the grid to check it. And now we're going to align on the horizontal. Perfect. Now, I had originally tried this cutting the dollar signs out. These shapes are a really good example of the cutout being too complex for just a cutout. You could go back in and glue the parts that actually fall out of the cut. But honestly, it's easier to cut this in the what would have been the show through color, the secondary to the outside. Cut that out of some waste and then glue that onto the outside. It adds another dimension anyway, and ultimately you don't lose the shape or have to go through and line up tiny little bits. So now for the pop-up itself, we want to use a font. In this case, it'll be Show Card Gothic. You want something kind of blocky, or at least I do. The blocky stuff will be stronger than, say, a script, but it will still allow you to weld the way a script does. So once we've got it kind of the way we want it, we've got our font changed over to the correct one, we're going to select everything and then ungroup it. This will allow each of the letters to be basically an individual asset. We can select one, scoot it over until it touches another and overlaps a good bit. And then basically we'll just repeat this process, and I speed it up a little bit because it does get a little boring watching the same operation over again. But once we get everything smushed together, we can start grouping the individual words. Then we can align those on each other. Then we can pull them together and weld everything. Welding will remove the overlap of the shapes and give us one solid cutout. And since we welded this, there's no reason to group it together. So now the other thing we want to do is make sure that we scale this down to where it does not reveal outside of the card. We do want it to be big enough to still be a pop, but you don't want it to overhang. It's a surprise, especially if the folks receiving it don't know that it's a pop-up. So you definitely want it to be hidden. And then we'll move it back over. The inside is going to be a contrast, so we're going to cut this on the same color as the outside if you're just doing a two color. So then we go to our cut settings, make sure we've got everything set correctly. My paper is heavy enough to where I actually need to bump this up to a 4. Make sure you also do it on the ratchet blade and not just in the settings. The settings digitally tell the cutter what you're going to be using, but don't actually change the depth of the cut. So now I'm using 2 sheets. I'm dividing this at the 6-inch mark on my 12x12 mat. There is overhang because I'm using letter size. So I'm just using the little cutter tool. I'm flipping my mat over so that I can use the grid lines as a visual marker for me. And I'm freehanding the cut, but I'm keeping it clear of that. And we don't want it to overhang and cause the cutter to misfeed. So we load our mat, everything else is good, and we send it to the Silhouette. I had a ton of fun working on this. This was my first time in Silhouette Studio, my first time using cardstock in the cutter. So I'm definitely new to this, definitely still learning, but I think it turned out really great. And I know my wife enjoyed the Cash Me Outside card. So if you liked it, definitely check out the Instructable link below. There will be free cut files there. There's also some contests I'm entered in, so if you check that out on Instructables, and also the Shogun Jimi Valentine's Day Challenge. I would really appreciate you checking out all the other makers involved with that. Get out there and support everybody in the community. Thanks.